Arrow.
Hey, look at you, Michael. What do you got a NASA shirt on for?
He loves NASA.
I love NASA as well. But the thing is, though, is that they have mass marketed that name so much that I'll go up and I'll talk with young adults and I'll go, man, thank you so much for supporting NASA. It's just a jacket, dude. And it's like, we got to get beyond that.
Interesting. Well, I always like seeing it. I mean, I think it's sort of saying, hey, I'm a person who's open to space.
Yes.
You know, they may not have imagined their role in it yet, but the fact that they're wearing the jacket, you know, and especially if they're a woman or a person of color, they are, as they walk through that airport, they are planting a seed in the minds of others. Like, hey, maybe that could be me wearing that jacket. I actually don't wear my jacket in the airport, but
that's like wearing your name tag at a grocery store. No, take that thing off, man. You'll be asked 50,000 times.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing between sort of, I don't know, being generous or bragging. You know, I never know. But when I'm in a big hurry, I do wear it. So
today is such a big day, and that's why this documentary is so special. And the reason why is because Boeing is getting into the space race, and tonight's the night that they're supposed to go up.
It is 10:34. Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore are going up on the Boeing Starliner, and it's long awaited. But I'm sure they are so excited, and I'm excited to watch.
What would you go through if you were on board that Starliner? Because I mean, everything has changed so much, and it looks so luxurious.
What would I go through in terms of being ready?
Mentally, physically, because I mean, it just something is. It doesn't look like the old days of Apollo when I was a kid, and I would just sit there in front of that TV, and you would see things that were, you know, it doesn't look as nice as what it does today.
Well, it's its first trip, right? So it's going to look. It still has that new car smell, right? But I think the challenge here has been, I have heard that this is a spacecraft that is a pilot's spacecraft, that it is built, engineered, and the controls are such that it's really, you know, a place that a pilot really feels at home. And Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore are both test pilots, and they're the people on this crew. It's been a mission that's been long in coming. And yet it's all part of, I mean, even though they're going to the space station, it is all actually part of paving the way back to the moon and onto Mars. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for them getting ready for this mission, it's a little bit different probably than the things you see in The Longest Goodbye in the movie, because they're focused on their piece of the road to Mars, which is, let's get another spacecraft moving so that we always have a way to get down to space and continue doing the research we're doing about what happens to people when they live in space, you know, things like that. So they're focused on, especially the first, you know, the ascent itself. It takes about 8.5 minutes to get to space. I imagine they're going through procedures and just practicing things, and also they've spent some time this week, as I understand it, in the real vehicle. Ooh. And that they've been in simulators a lot. So they've gotten to sit in their vehicle, sort of just imagine how it really feels, or understand how it really feels to not just be in a simulator that's always going to be a little different.
The Longest Goodbye, the documentary, I think is the very first time where it speaks the truth of what we should expect as humans and as astronauts. Because, I mean, 3 years, I mean, that's kind of scary to me.
Well, it's interesting that you would say that, because I think that basically, we've known for a while how long it's probably going to take to Mars, and people will tell me, I think everybody will say those words. They'll say, hey, you know, I heard the journey to Mars is like a 3-year journey. Boy, that seems like a long time. But when you see this movie, those words really take on a different connotation, I think, because you see what it's like for the humans, and you see what it was like for me and my family. Caleb Barron is an astronaut right now. Could very well be one of our people walking on the moon soon. And Matthias Maurer from Germany, and other scientists who are coming up with ways to keep astronauts, feeling like themselves and able to take part in the mission. And things are put in, I don't think it's a movie that NASA or the other space agencies could make, in that it's seen from a very candid point of view. A neat director that asked Kayla and I and different questions that nobody had ever asked us. And for myself, I realized that they were stories that I wanted to tell. So it's a pretty special film.
That's exactly what I love about it. In the way that one of the things, I mean, astronauts have always been superheroes, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to talk with a lot of them. But what I love most is how real you are. You are like somebody who lives next door to me. You just happen to go into space. That happens to be your job.
Well, and so many of us are real, I would say, but I think that there was a sort of, kind of a way of communicating in the space program that has evolved over time, where at first it was really only words that had to do with the mission, because the human was outside that mission. But now that we're talking about going so far and for so long, we have to think about the humans, and we can't do that just before we're ready to strap them in. I mean, people thought about Sonny and Butch and what they're going to need to be ready today many years ago. And so the fact that this movie shows you some of the preparations that NASA and the other space agencies are making about, gee, it's going to be hard for people not to be able to be in real-time communication with their families. What other ways can we offer them? And I'll tell you that I don't like all those ways in the movie, but I do like the fact that they're going to sort of spark some ideas for different people who have access to different worlds than NASA does.
Yeah.
And we're going to generate a lot of cool ideas with this movie.
You bring up a good point when you talk about we're not going to be in real-time conversations, because every now and then you'll see it even on Star Trek, where they come across something that was sent many months ago or even many hours ago, and we can't relate with that. But yet in this one, in the Longest Goodbye, you really bring the truth to it. Now we have a better understanding of the distance that we're going to have to travel.
Right, exactly. Like, I don't know, when the Enterprise comes across some abandoned spacecraft and they listen to some message that somebody left, hoping somebody would find it. This movie makes you feel like you are in the head and on the spacecraft with the people who were leaving these messages for their families.
Yeah, because I mean, the only way we can deal with that these days is that when you're watching the 5 p.m. news and they're talking to a reporter in another country and they've got that 3 or 4 second delay. And I mean, even that is enough to go, oh my God, there was no response. So I can't imagine the communication. And the reason why I bring up communications is because that's what I believe in. That's content. That's a connection.
Well, I think so too. And my view of looking back at the Earth, what really stood out to me was the fact that looking down, just realize that everybody down there, every human alive, that they're actually so much more connected than they understand they are. And it doesn't have to do with geography. I mean, they're all the part of the crew of Spaceship Earth.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I'm one of those fools that got onto my VR goggles and, where you get that little 3D world. And I went to Mars with my VR goggles.
Oh, good.
And
How was it?
It was fascinating. But it reminded me so much of Arizona or the dry lands of Wyoming. And I kept going, what would be the reason why we need to go to Mars?
Well, we're gonna go.
Yeah,
I mean, humans.
I love
whether
your
it's
heart.
NASA, I mean, it's just kind of, even if it turns out to be similar to someplace else, although I'll tell you, I think that no place is ever the same all the time. There's different, they're always different. But going to Mars, I mean, you're gonna have that same view, but then you'd be, I mean, like, let's say it's looking like Arizona. Which I think is actually pretty beautiful, but you're also so that they make sure they are entertaining this new thing that we haven't thought about that's really going to be a problem. We have to get the word to them, and they need to understand that this is one of the things we're going to need before we're ready to go to Mars. So they're going to feel like every minute counts when they're there on the surface of Mars.
When you were up there for 180 days, in the final moments, did you go through the same thing that we do when we're about ready to come home from the vacation? We don't want it to end.
Absolutely.
I knew it.
No question. And, and part of it is, really that it's so clear in a visceral way that the work you're doing is more important than whether you wish each other was different. And that's, I think, what gets you through is, and why I didn't want to leave even at the very end is because the work we're doing, I think, is really important. And you can just feel that. And you just want to get more and more done. But pretty soon your job is actually to go home and turn that over to somebody else.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself in a moment where John F. Kennedy planted the seed? He said he had that vision. And look at where we are today. If only John F. Kennedy could see where we are today.
Oh, so, interestingly, I've never actually thought about that. And I think that he'd be both just like maybe all of us, regretful that we're not always further than we'd
Yeah.
like to be. But space is hard. And, we go when we're ready, and the reality of ready is hard to stomach. There's a lot that we need to know before we can really feel like we've made things as safe as we can make them, which is never safe. But I think he'd also be so I think he'd be so happy. I think because I think he'd see people of all different sizes, shapes, gender, and colors living up on the space station, and nationalities living together, despite any troubled times here on the ground. And space is very compelling. And the fact that we do that up on the space station means that it can be done here on the ground. And I think it inspires people.
Don't you think that this is a great learning tool, the documentary, the movie, the Longest Goodbye? Because, I mean, I'm always thinking about that child student. Which one of them is going up into space? Because of today's technology, they've got the patience, they've got the skills, and the guts to take chances where most parents are going, I'm not touching it.
Well, I do think that it's a lesson or a movie that we can really learn so many different things from. And one of them is that, when you're picking people for a team, I mean, you can see that Kayla Barron didn't pick her crewmates, and neither did, excuse me, Matthias Maurer or me. And we're all really, really different. And yet I'll share something I thought fascinating from a panel where Kayla and I were both speaking. Someone asked her, when you had that debris incident where you had to evacuate to the ship that you came up in as your rescue ship and be ready to undock and go home, what was running through your head? And I'll summarize what she said. Well, we followed all the procedures and we got everything battened down and left and went into our spaceship. And when everything was done, my first thought was, I hope we don't have to go home. Yeah. So even with that danger, her first thought is, I hope we don't have to go home because, people want to accomplish that mission.
One of the things that I always fall into this trap, and it's the way that Hollywood loves to work on us, is that we're all going to go up into space, and there's going to be little Wallies down here that are going to be cleaning up the human mess. And it's going to be, so what's going to happen to Earth when we're up there?
Well, I don't know that we're going to soon be at a time where, we have to be leaving Earth. And part of what inspires me and gives me hope is the fact that we are, as people, including more and more people, as the ones who could have the solutions that we need.
Yeah.
Where we're looking to the wisdom of indigenous people. We're looking to the wisdom of women and men that are our neighbors that didn't look like a scientist, but we found out that they were. Yeah. And so more and more people are included in the solutions. And also, specifically in terms of space, how to recycle air, water, how to live in a place where we can't grow food because the growing food is limited, like on Mars. I mean, as space explorers, we have to solve those problems, but the solutions come right back down here to Earth and help us with what we're doing down here in terms of water filtration, growing plants and food in places where it's hard to do that. So I feel like we're using all of our different experiences to try to understand better how to live better here on Earth.
You talk about building those teams. I'm so inspired by these major companies like SpaceX that's working together, and now Boeing. I mean, it's like everybody is coming together to make this happen, and that should be inspiring to so many different generations beyond us.
Well, it really should, because, working for NASA is going to be different than working at SpaceX, and different people with different personalities are going to now don't have just one space agency to be exploring with. And so I'm really excited. And also these new entities like SpaceX, like, so many other space companies, including Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic.
That's it. Yeah.
They are helping to pave the way to space. And they can take, more risks with hardware, if it's just hardware without any people on it, than government agencies like NASA can take. And so actually, by taking those risks, they leapfrog us further ahead, and everyone gets to leap ahead and start with, more knowledge than they had before.
So now we build that station up there on the moon. And then we start. So the goal is to fly to the moon, pick up a second shift, go to Mars. Is that what the original goal is?
that plan, that architecture of how we're really going to do this, I think is going to evolve. I mean, one of the reasons to think that we might want to have the moon be our fuel stop is that the biggest price, so to speak, that we pay is the energy that it takes to leave this Earth. And, so much so that even if you've noticed, we're always launching, further east because the Earth actually rotates in that direction. And as slow as the Earth rotates, we actually need that extra momentum to not have to, bring as much fuel and have the rocket be, it really helps us. Getting to space is really, really hard from Earth. But once we're at the moon, now we've gone past that big, gravity pull. It's still there, but not as big. And so it makes sense. It may be one of the architectures that we embrace.
I would love to be a fly on the wall if they exist up there in space, to be that child that meets for the first time an Earthling. In other words, they walk up to maybe their grandparent and they say, "What was it like? I'm from here, but you came from there. What was it like to be from Earth?"
It's going to be, there's a lot of things we thought were impossible, but it turns out they are. And I think the hardest part of that equation is to not just to realize that it's not just cartoon characters or people in a movie, it's real humans. And I think this film will remind you that humans are both the hardest and the most joyful, easiest part of this equation.
Yeah. So many documentaries have been about the past, but I love the fact that you guys are focusing on the future. And that takes courage to be able to say, okay, this is where we're growing.
Well, it really took, I think, I'm always amazed at the sort of unique intersection that has to happen for a film that really makes ripples down here on Earth to happen. And in this case, it was a director and a producer that had questions about going to Mars that they wanted to understand. And doing that, they met Al Holland, the psychologist, who is featured in the movie. And all of a sudden they realized this was the story they wanted to tell. And because they could then on their own do so much work, then it became picked up as a PBS independent lens production. And the fact that it was picked up by PBS makes it, as NASA is evaluating, we can't participate in every film. What one can we do? This one has PBS backing. We know that people will see the results of the tax dollars that we're spending. I mean, it's this amazing intersection where the right thing, the right people, the right skills all have to come together, and they come together in this movie. And it is both wonderful and I would say scary that it's premiering on PBS tonight.
Oh my God, I just can't imagine what you're going through there. We talked about going up into space. Well, you'll be in space in the air tonight.
It's true, and my family too. It's been pretty interesting to get to see this movie with my 10-year-old son, and also the same. I have two sons, but to watch this movie together with them at the same time has been a really interesting experience and a great family one.
Wow. Where can people go to find out more about you and more about NASA? Because they are so deeply dedicated to the future of where we're going.
I would go all sorts of places on the internet, but I would also go to the library. If you want to learn more about how we get to space and things like that, think about reading some books that are written for kids. Yeah. When you want to learn a new science thing, that's what the folks on Science Friday were telling me. Go and read books that are designed where you can actually just read through and get an idea and then dive deeper. And I think there's lots of folks you can learn. I love a bunch of folks on the internet that like to tell the space stories in ways that are understandable. And so there's go find some of those, whoever sort of resonates with you. And I'm anxious for people to learn more.
Absolutely. Please come back to the show anytime in the future, Doctor. The door is always going to be open for you.
Well, thank you very much. I actually have a book coming out this summer with some of my lessons learned and experiences, and I'm pretty pleased to be able to share those with folks too.
Oh, I love it. I love it. See, connected. You're always connected with people. That's brilliant. You be brilliant, okay?
Well, thanks for encouraging folks to watch the movie. It's significant. It really is. I think you'll be. I think folks, it's like a space movie they've never seen.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.